host of the Lapin Assessment, security analyst Yaakov Lapin, and our very own I-24 News senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osseron. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining us. I will start our conversation by reminding that what we're still saying ongoing was supposed to be concluded within 72 hours, just to reframe the conversation, Mr. Lapin. But with that said, today, the Zikim corridor or pathway was reopened for humanitarian aid to get in. So my question is, we're seeing some elements of the agreement or the framework materialize on the ground, while others are not. So who and what decides which is which?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ellie. The way I see it is that, first of all, Hamas is in blatant violation of multiple clauses of this truce and has been since day one. We're talking about hundreds of violations already since the truce went into effect, whether it's opening fire on the IDF, whether it's rearming rather than disarming, whether it's not returning the bodies of the hostages that it murdered. Hamas is in constant violation of this truce. So why isn't it falling apart, and why is Israel opening up new border crossings instead? I think the situation right now is American pressure. America and the Trump administration want to see this truce at least enter stage two, and Israel doesn't want to be seen as the side that didn't let it get to stage two. So for now, to put it bluntly, Israel is playing ball, but, and there's a very big but here, the issue of disarmament is very likely to become, at some point, sooner or later, the issue that's going to undo this entire house of cards. And when that happens, Israel wants to have enough diplomatic credit to be able to tell Washington, look, we went along with this despite all of the violations. Now the game is up. But we haven't reached that point. And so I think this is diplomatic point scoring, building up credit for what seems to be an inevitable future crisis.
So I wouldn't say two separate events or trends that we're seeing in the West Bank, both long exist underground, and yet at this point in time, it has the inflammatory potential to sabotage the greater regional plans promoted by Washington.
We're talking about
the West Bank, yeah.
Yeah, the violence that we just saw in that report. Absolutely. Look, this is a problem that has gone on too long and that has seen no concrete solution when a solution is at hand. And the solution is not going to come from the IDF. The IDF is not trained or qualified to deal with Israeli lawbreakers over the Green Line. It's supposed to be the police or the border police. There needs to be a task force. There need to be hotspots mapped out with intelligence. There needs to be preemptive action. Israel knows very well how to do this, and it's time for the decision to be made, because any one of these attacks can set off a chain reaction and undo the very hard work that the IDF and the Shin Bet, the Central Command, are doing day in and day out to stabilize the West Bank. So it's really long overdue. And let's also remember today that we heard condemnations from regional council heads of Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria absolutely condemning this violence. They do not represent the 500,000 or so Israelis living over the Green Line. These are hundreds of fringe, basically anarchist, violent, thugs who are attacking Palestinian civilians who've done absolutely nothing. And this situation has got to get under control ASAP.
So you're saying, well, other issues or fronts demand some complicated or creative solutions. Here, it's a no-brainer. It's just doing what
decision has to be made.
To be done. And speaking of, let's look up now to a fiery ceasefire. The IDF says it carried out airstrikes against the Hezbollah weapons depot and an adjacent underground site belonging to the terror group in southern Lebanon earlier in the day, an almost daily occurrence by now, while the efforts to disarm Hezbollah from its weapons aren't really moving as desired. And this is perhaps an understatement, Mr. Lapin. So speaking of no-brainers, is this no-brainer, or are we facing a more complicated situation when we're looking up north?
Well, the situation is not that complicated, because basically what's happening is that Hezbollah is trying to rearm, reorganize, recalibrate, and every single day Israel is saying you cannot do that, and it's not saying that with words, it's saying that with action. So we've got very good intelligence coverage by military intelligence, by other members of the intelligence community, translated into firepower strikes immediately. In other words, when Israel detects Hezbollah trying to rebuild capabilities, it strikes. It strikes from the air. It strikes every day. Hundreds and hundreds of Hezbollah terrorists have been eliminated because of this new policy. Hezbollah is losing its patience, but there's not much it can do because it knows that if it fires back, then Israel will take away even more of its capabilities. The complication begins not here, but rather with the role of Lebanon as a state and the Lebanese army. They are expected to be leading the disarmament of Hezbollah. They're doing nothing of the sort. They're giving false impressions, false reports about their progress. Most of it is an illusion. They're not really making serious progress. They're not going into the houses where the arms are in southern Lebanon. Israel is the one that's making sure that Hezbollah doesn't rebuild. So the real question is Lebanon, the state, waiting for Israel to do more of the heavy lifting so that it can benefit and then weaken Hezbollah further? That, to me, seems to be the case. Everybody gets to criticize Israel while Israel does all the heavy lifting and enjoy the fruit of Israel's benefit.
It's not always a matter of how complicated or not the situation is, but rather the willingness to actually act upon it. Yaakov Lapin, security analyst, host of the Lapin Assessment. Thank you very much for joining us.